Welcome to the Private Lender Podcast with your hosts from Hard Money Bankers, Jason Balin and Chris Haddon. This podcast is sponsored by HardMoneyMastermind.com.
Hey guys, hope you're all doing well. Chris and Jason here with the Private Lenders Podcast. Interesting topic today about the different seasons that one goes through in their business and their career. Something I kind of took away from an Alex Hormozy podcast, and we were discussing it here in the office related to HMB. Real quick before we get going on that, one announcement about the Hard Money Mastermind Inner Circle meeting here in Columbia, Maryland. November 3rd and 4th is almost full. We have room for 2 more lenders. So if you're interested in coming here and working with us on private lending, go to hardmoneymastermindinnercircle.com, make application, and schedule a time to talk to our program director. And we hope to see you here in November. Okay. All right. So the different seasons, now that we're coming up on the 15th anniversary of HMB, so we closed our first loan in December of 2007. Meaning in December, it's the 15th anniversary. And we're thinking back and chatting about the different seasons, as we refer to them, of HMB's history. So going back, startup time for any company, and us included, we were no different. It was challenging. It was very different than where we are now. We started pretty young too. I was actually discussing this with a friend yesterday. We started early in terms of making our own business. So we had about a 5-year run post-college, working different real estate and finance jobs. And then we started HMB when we were like 27 or 28. And we knew, so at the time, we knew what we were doing in real estate for the most part, not to the level that we are now, but we were competent in our underwriting of residential, fix and flip deals. Like we were competent there in the transaction. Now, that doesn't mean that we knew anything about raising capital, building a company, putting systems together, which we had the pleasure of figuring out day by day, working in the back of a title company in Catonsville, Maryland, which only charged us $500 a month. Wild times back then. It was a different world.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are attracted to private lending or hard money lending, and I don't think they have all the answers or have it all figured out, but they feel like they have segments of it. And I remember, we came from a background that we knew a lot of real estate agents, brokers, real estate investors, and things like that. And to be honest, we thought that was going to be the easy part. We know all these people. We don't know capital investors, but we felt like we could find them at the time. And we understood the real estate transactions. We had flipped some houses, we owned some properties and stuff like that. So we understood real estate, and we thought, hey, we have all these real estate investors that need capital. Let's figure out a way to find capital to do so. And I'll never forget, and we share this story all the time, that we thought the easy part was finding the borrowers, finding the clients, and the hard part was going to be finding capital. And what we realized over time, and don't get me wrong, it took us years and years and years to raise large sums of capital. But what we realized is as we approached capital investors, the quick answer was, okay, that sounds great. I can get a high interest rate return. I'm a low LTV on a good piece of local collateral. Sounds great. Go find me some opportunities. And then when we really dug into our database of our borrowers and our clients and real estate investors that we knew, it was a lot harder to find those good gems, those good deals. That didn't mean that they didn't exist, but we were like, yeah, this would be easy. We know lots of people that want money. Well, just because they want money doesn't mean they're qualified to get money or will accept the terms and things like that. So that was kind of our first wake-up call, that finding really, really, really good deals was the first part. And that's what we spent a lot of time on for years, getting the phone to ring.
Absolutely. And it was also a very different time in the market. Like, keep in mind, this was end of 2007 going into 2008, and everything had just crashed, right? Real estate, financial world. A lot of lenders, private lenders that were using whatever kind of capital, weren't lending. They didn't have money. I remember when we used to go to real estate investment meetings and meetups, promoting our business, getting the word out there about HMB. people's main question, do you remember what people used to ask? Do you guys run out of money? Nobody's been asking that in the past 10 years, but 15 years ago in 2008, that was their main concern. Do you have capital to lend? If you do a few loans, are you still going to have more capital to lend, right? And it just goes to show you it's just a very different time. And like Jason started with, getting leads was easy, but getting real deals is a different situation. We got tons of calls. Like we started with a bit of a database and, put up a website and, got our business phone line and stuff like that. And leads came in, but, having real viable deals, that we learned about the numbers game that this business is, like, really quickly. Capital was also challenging. It happened, like we lined up all the capital we needed for the deals that hit the pipeline, but that's not to say it was easy. And that's kind of how we developed like our capital raising system and our presentation and closing process and the marketing for the capital side and everything else, because we had to, right? We had quit our jobs. This is our full-time thing. We needed to close the deals that were coming to the pipeline. We had very low company overhead. We had our own bills to pay, and it all got paid. But it's not to say startup time was easy by any means, but it did start moving pretty quickly. Like the first 3 years, I remember we doubled in production back then, up to like, 3-year doubling up to like 10 million or something like that we were doing in a year. And is that about right? Would you say about
and
3 were like had 10?
Yeah. And keep in mind, if you're listening or watching this, you probably might only have the goal of, hey, if I can just do a few deals a month, I can make a good living. I'll have a good thing going. Sure. If it's with my own money or I'm raising capital from others. And that was our thing was, we had very little overhead and expenses for years. And, all things considered, our overhead now compared to top line revenue is extremely low percentage wise. That's one of the beauties of this business. But back in the day, like we had some very small expenses. So and it was just the two of us. So it was one of those things that, do the math. You don't have to do that many deals to be profitable.
Yeah. And then shortly after that, probably around year 2 or 3, we moved to a new office, which was also small and inexpensive. It actually wasn't that small, but it was inexpensive. And
it was big. It was big, but it was inexpensive.
That's right.
It was kind of a dump.
It was kind of a dump for sure, but it worked for us at the time, and we had fun there, and we started hiring. So we started with an admin that didn't work out, and then we hired our first accountant, which was a huge step, to be able to pass that off. And so we could go into more productive, like business building activities. Then we also got an admin person to help out. And we stayed like that for a while. And then during this time, like we were growing pretty well. And then we went to another office in a nicer part of town. It was a smaller office, but it was nicer. And we had a good team of like 4, call it something like that. And we're still growing throughout this time. Maybe we hit about 20 mil in production, something like that. We moved to our current office, and that's pretty much where I would start the second season, I think. We move here. We have a bigger team. We're above 20 mil, like 20, 25 million, something like that. We start doing all kinds of stuff. Like also during this phase, we had hired a business coach, a guy local to the DC area, came recommended by a friend, because we needed to, in essence, make good decisions. We needed some guidance, not related to the real estate part of what we were doing or the lending specifically, but owning and managing and growing an organization, right? A company with people, with systems and processes and like a structure. And so we got good at that by working with that business coach for a few years straight. And then into the second season, we were branching out into other stuff, like as entrepreneurs, like as, young, ambitious entrepreneurs, we wanted to get into other things, right? So we started buying rental properties. We're pretty good marketers. So we launched some websites related to real estate things. We wrote a book, right? We're trying to get speaking appearances. We're in here shooting content and podcasts and all that stuff. And it was a fun, exciting time. I feel like some of that stuff, we were just trying to do everything under the sun, really. And over time, you kind of realize which of those activities is really moving the needle and a bunch of them that aren't. And then later on, we'll talk about the focusing that comes in. But it was a fun time. It was a lively office in here. There's all kinds of stuff going on. we're shooting videos, hosting lunches. Like it was fun. That was a very enjoyable season.
Well, I think a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners and folks run into similar situations. I don't want to say that they're bad situations, but they run into similar situations where they have a good business going, they have a good thing going, and they're still trying to learn and expand and figure out kind of what the next steps are. And we were always trying to try to expand in different things. Hey, we have a good thing going with our lending company. We're well capitalized. We have good staff in place. They're running a lot of some of the operations for us. Why don't we not focus, that's the wrong word, because we've always been focused on HMB, but why don't we branch off and try this or try that, because we had the capital to put behind it, money's coming in, capital's deals are coming in. So you do stuff. And, I've talked to other hard money lenders, other business owners that have, and again, I don't want to say fallen in the trap because that's not necessarily the right term, but that is kind of where it is. Like they get anxious, right? They what's next? And sometimes that's good. Sometimes it might not be good. I mean, I remember, before we were disciplined about it, that we would want to chase shiny objects, that when it got to the end of the road, it's like, you know what? That was just a shiny object. Like, if we want to quit HMB and be full-time business owners in this space or devote a lot of time to this, that could work. But, we make a lot of money per hour in the lending world. And I think a lot of private lenders do. And it's a lot less headache than some of these other operations. And, we kind of learned that as we dug into it, that it's not just, hey, let's just go do this. And it's going to, it's going to flourish overnight.
Yeah. I mean, it was an important learning process, I think. And like I said before, it was fun. It turns out that, private lending is one of the best models. Not everything in real estate is, not everything in, web business is the best model, but, it was a very enjoyable process to go through. And it's kind of like we were young adults at the time. Like when we were starting HMB in season 1, like we were adolescents and teenagers as far as like career goes. I mean, we're actually adults, but you know what I mean? At the time, like we were adolescents and teenagers and figuring it out. And then during phase 2, season 2, we were like young adults, maybe like, well, I mean, we literally were like early 30s, something like that. And it's interesting thinking back, and we behaved as such, and we were ambitious and tried to do all kinds of different stuff. And then we move on to season 3, which is probably the past 5 years, I would say, which is where we let go of some of the less productive, less profitable aspects of our operation and focused in on what works very well that we've learned. We are maturing as a company, we're maturing as business people, and we got more dialed in on just the straight lending, increasing what we know works very well in terms of doing the same stuff in other markets is one thing we did. And also we got better, our skill sets got better in certain areas. Like we got better at lending on commercial properties, right? We got better even more recently at doing equity deals as well. And in general, we got better at finance. Like we were in season 1 and 2, like we were marketing heavy. Then we started transitioning into also being finance nerds instead of only marketing and like entrepreneur nerds. And that has, the whole thing is snowballed. And like there's, just more focus and able to put more capital into our own deals and into side deals, and like focusing on the high leverage activities and partnerships that work has been season 3. And there will be another season in the future, but like this season 3, it was like, it's interesting. It was like, it became, I don't know, like there was more profit coming out of X amount of work activity, right? As opposed to season 2.
Yeah, I think the term maturity used is accurate. And also it's, high leverage, high returns with little effort. And that I think has a lot to go with it. And, we've been down that road and we've seen stuff, and, it's interesting. And, sometimes, people have heard the term, like you learn by teaching. And over the years, we've created other offices and we've brought on partners and things like that. We've obviously done consulting as well. And, you sometimes you don't realize that you know it or you learned it until you're teaching somebody else it, and you're like, listen, I know this sounds like a good idea for you now, but it's not. I've been through it, and this is kind of a cool passion project, but you're kind of going to spin your wheels, and it's not worth the effort. Even if you can make a little bit of more money, even if you can make some money out of it, it's not going to be worth the effort. Focus on your core business. Focus on your deals. If you're doing a loan, if your average loan amount's $200,000 and you're not using your own capital, you're probably making $10,000 for every deal that you do, between the points and the servicing fees and some other miscellaneous costs. It's a lot of money per transaction. If you have a staff, that shouldn't take you much time at all to do. So it's a high return. And if you're lending your own money out, it's even more of a return. So over the years, we've just been more mature. We've been disciplined to not mess with some of those things. And, I remember talking to some of our partners, and they'd be like, hey, wouldn't this be cool if we had this internally? And our response is simple, be like, you know what? That would be cool. If you want to kind of go down that road and spin your wheels and potentially do it, go ahead. But even though it could be something that maybe internally our business could use, I don't want to mess with it. It's not worth the headache. It's the same thing with loans. Keep in mind that the lowest, a super low LTV for an unsophisticated borrower typically will default. Does that mean you're going to lose money? Absolutely not. Does that mean that you're going to have headaches? Absolutely so. Right? Let's say, let's say somebody inherits a property and it's worth $400,000, and it's a pure investment property, and they need $50,000 out to renovate that house, and they don't have good credit, they don't have experience. It's going to be a headache. They're going to stumble through the construction process. They're going to mismanage their payments. They're going to mismanage paying their contractors. They're not going to fully know the real estate transaction. It is going to turn into a headache. Does that mean you don't do the deal? Maybe, maybe not. Right? You probably will do the deal, especially if you're starting out. But the last thing you want is a whole portfolio of deals like that. You'll drive yourself crazy. Early on, we had a lot of creative deals because we were in earlier seasons. We were less mature. We were less disciplined. You don't know what you don't know. But now Chris and I always joke about it. We can see the future on every deal that we do a loan on. We know for the most part how it's going to perform. There's always,
there's surprises here and there.
There's always surprises, but sophisticated real estate investors that, have good credit, they have their own cash, they have experience, they have high, good characteristics, high credit, they perform. You don't have to micromanage them. The opposite type of borrower client, well, the opposites happen. The opposite thing happens.
Yeah. And these are the things that you learn with time, experience, going through this maturing process of the different seasons that we described. Hope you guys got some value out of that. Maybe it applies to your career and business as well. So like I started at the beginning, if you are interested in coming here and working with us and around 20 other top private lenders from around the country, that is November 3rd and 4th here in Columbia, Maryland. We have the hotel stuff and conference room and all that stuff lined up. Just check out Hard Money Mastermind innercircle.com to learn more. Thanks, guys. See you next time on the Private Lenders Podcast.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Private Lenders Podcast. Please note that the opinions stated by all the speakers on this show are only opinions and not legal, financial, or accounting advice. Please make sure to always check with your own legal, accounting, and financial professionals. If you'd enjoyed this episode of the Private Lenders Podcast, we'd appreciate it if you spread the word. Make sure to check out hardmoneymastermind.com, the #1 free community for new and experienced private and hard money lenders.